Global Female Acceleration Program.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for coming so early. I know we all have busy days and it's hot summer, so we'd all rather be somewhere else enjoying ourselves. But it's always a pleasure to come and get to meet this audience. Usually we have a few more men, so I apologize. It's not as diverse as we would like today, but sometimes that happens and it works the other way. But I'm very excited to welcome Dessy Torodova, who's been a friend for a few years now through the association. And we've got to see her take on a couple of different roles as an entrepreneur. And now she's here to talk today about what she's experienced and also some of her vision for how things could be improved here in the Swiss startup community and fintech in particular. So I don't want to take up a lot of the time. You've already had a chance to meet a little bit, but I'll turn it over now to Dessy to share her thoughts. Thank you, Dessy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Real pleasure. A Global Female Acceleration Program. So, global female support on the startup front, or global female support simply. And why I got so interested in this topic, because being a female entrepreneur myself, and maybe I'll just make a small detour to say a couple of words on that side, and currently running two startups, one in the insurtech field, one in the wealth tech field, so both in fintech. And thank you to the association, to the Swiss Fintech Association, for having me as a member and inviting me for this event. I really faced all the structural problems in the system that a female entrepreneur can face. That said, I had a long and fruitful corporate life before jumping into entrepreneurship. And already there, I guess some of you may have experienced also that same challenge, that sometimes we are not really judged and perceived as per our talents, as per our competency, but okay, well, yeah, it's all good, but you know, let's give opportunities to the boys. So again, I don't like saying that. I'm not a feminist, I'm an equalist. I really think that the way Mother Nature meant it, 50-50 approximately, is the right way to go. And I've prepared also quite some data points here to share with you to actually prove the fact that when we are complementary, when both males and females are really partnering and joining forces, mighty things happen. And that's really what I think is the power of also having more support for females, namely to get to that 50-50 ratio, which also empowers men and female, you know, with a synergetic effect. So this is really my mantra, this is what I'm preaching, and this is what I'm exploring and kind of started as an idea. So to start it from a little earlier, I'll just quote for you an anthropologist, Philippe Bernot, who actually says that for millennia, females and males were really separated. You know, if you look a couple of thousands of years back, when we used to live in this tribal form of society, females and the kids were on one side and then males were on the other side. So somehow, while females always had their antennas on to understand everything, you know, the kids, the other females, the guys, when they come back, you know, with some prey, hopefully to nourish the community. That said, men for millennia weren't so much into the antenna mode. They were really focused on achieving certain goal. And again, that was the survival goals, right? So up until today, this continues. This is pretty much the same. So while we are, as the same anthropologist says, we are closest now compared to at any other point of time, meaning we now even live in couples, which again was not the main formula for all those millions and millennia of years, right? Now we are very close and we still don't understand each other. We still very much have this disconnect. And this is a fact. Well, we are making some progress. There are lots of changes. We as couples are, and you know, in the workplace, as partners in business, as you know, friends. We are really making lots of progress, but we are still, in my view, in the views of lots of scientists and lots of, you know, statisticians who produce very impressive data, we are still not close enough. So a lot of room for progress. So that's on one side. On the other side, how we perceive females, both females and males, how everybody, all the humankind, looks at females. That's another very interesting component in the story. And I'll give you another example. It's an experiment by two professors, one from New York University and the other one is from Columbia Business School. So they ran an experiment with a case study which features a real-life entrepreneur, Heidi Rosen. And she has done a fantastic job because of her rich network, personal, professional. She's very outgoing as a personality. So the case study describes her and how successful she became into the venture capital world. Those two profs split this case study into two groups. In the first group, they keep the case study as it is. Heidi Rosen does all that. In the second group, they just change one thing. The name, exactly. They change it to Howard. So now suddenly Howard Rosen has done exactly the same as Heidi Rosen. They split the groups so that none of them knows what the others are doing. And then everybody discusses and goes through the case discussion and analysis. The results. Howard Rosen and Heidi Rosen are both superb achievers. They've done great stuff. These are the facts. However, Howard is a great guy. He's cool. You want to work with him. You know, he's this, passionate entrepreneur who's really using the power of community, who's really building great things. He's a visionary. He's, fill in the blank. Great. Now back to Heidi. Heidi, you don't really want to work with her. She's too pushy. She's even aggressive. She's like, how on earth? She has to be more back home with the kids and, she has to be more communal. She has to be, yes, she's done great stuff on the job, but, she's been, too much, right? So here comes at place a second big argument that we actually judge based on various stereotypes, and that also applies for races, for age, etc., etc. But for gender, it's very strong, it's very explicit. So we have those stereotypes attached, and if a female behaves like a man, because in essence that's what Heidi did, right? Mostly men are those, adamant achievers which really do those great things, statistically speaking. There are females too, but much fewer. So suddenly Heidi falls into the wrong category. And the proof of this case study, the analysis is basically that likability and achievement are positively correlated. They kind of go together for males. They're negatively correlated for females. God forbid, if you're an achiever, if you're talented, if you're doing great things and you're a female, nobody likes you. And again, this bias comes from both men and women. That's the shocking part. We females are also judging other females according to this bias. And one may think, well, shame on us. No, it's again those millennia of stereotypes of living in a certain way. That's what our modus operandi was for all these years. It's not easy to change. We have to re-educate ourselves. And since now the evolution and the progress have gone so fast, we didn't have time to get there. So we need this education to, I won't say to be imposed on us, but to be offered to us. And that's where comes the idea, right? The idea to have more support for, and again, entrepreneurs, starting off from entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, but then I think this idea can be spread on many more fronts. Also supporting females in corporate, also supporting females in schools. I wish someone, when I was finishing my high school, or even during my high school, would come and talk to me about everything that I have here. I would just love that. Nobody came, right? Nobody told me all that, so I had to figure out myself along my professional journey. All these data kind of tell us that both males and females have something to learn and have, more progress to make in order to appreciate and support female achievement. And the question is, why should we bother so much? I mean, except for the fact that we are females, we want to be kind of more at ease in the world. That's one side of the story. The second side of the story is that it really increases the impact. Again, back to the point of our complementarity, when Mother Nature meant it, 50-50 ratio of males and females on this planet, that was a wise decision because we are very complementary and we really work together in a much better, much more synergistic ways compared to separately. Versus again, when we look at data today in the world, there are way more males at key positions, key roles, and kind of driving business change, etc. So, we are missing an opportunity. We are leaving money and progress on the table. So there is a very important impact out of that as well that we are kind of thinking and addressing with all that. So a couple of data points on that, and I'll be looking at my list because those are lots of data points here. Female founders drive 60% better return on investment than only male-led companies. So if it's females or a mixture, things get really way better. According to Credit Suisse, female CEOs have 19% higher return on equity and 10% higher dividend payout. Shares of companies where women make up at least 1/3 of senior management have much higher annualized stock returns than those with fewer women, according to yet another research institute. If you add 3 women to your board of directors, that can increase your company's return on equity by 46% on average. Quantopian, another research entity, found that 80 women CEOs that it followed during 12-year study up until 2014, they were observed to produce equity returns for their shareholders of 226% higher than the S&P 500. Not 20, not 100, 226. Not bad, I would say. The complementarity at play. Very often women entrepreneurs, back to entrepreneurship. And here, by the way, I'm giving data from various studies. So some address only US, other address only tech companies. So it's not really all as consistent as I would like it to be, but I'm still working on that. So, maybe next time we chat, or if I send you some materials, it will be really apples to apples. But still, I just selected some really key data points here. Very often women need only half as much money to get started on a venture. Maybe because we are more efficient spenders is potentially one reason. Maybe because we start a little later in life. Male founders usually start at age between 22 and 34. For us females, it's 10 years later. Kids are already grown-ups, although mine is 6.5. So she's an entrepreneur too, together with her mom. So we are typically in the ballpark of 35 to 45 as an age. That's when we are starting businesses. We are also starting businesses at a faster rate than men. And again, I can continue, but I don't want to bore you with too much of that. You see what synergy is produced. And I guess the logic comes from a research by one of the top British neuroscientists, Anne Moir, who studied men and female, and females actually we are different, and let's just embrace that. If any feminist tells you we are exactly the same and all equal, yes and no, we should have equal rights. Probably I fully agree with that, but we have different biochemistry, we have different modus operandi, we have different brain patterns, and she's been proving in her studies that males have way more sequential, linear thinking. So if you actually sit with a male and discuss a project, a problem, a solution, it will be really how we get from point A to point B to point C, etc. And that's how, for example, we are coding as well. It's a very linear process, so maybe that's why there are less females in tech. Like, all that movement in the Silicon Valley, girls in tech or females in tech. Versus females, the way our brains operate, again, probably going back millennia in the past, we were in the center of our community. So, here there will be the guys, the elderly, the kids. So our brain patterns are namely like that. It's hub and spoke model. So, we try, and again, that's backed by research, we reason and we try to see things from various angles, the hub and spoke phenomenon. So our thinking and analysis bumps up and jumps back and forth from, okay, so how about this consideration? How about that consideration? It's not A to B to C to D. So while I'm not saying one is better than the other, I'm saying the two of them are beautifully complementary. You need to have both of these, right? Versus if you only isolate and have one of them, it cannot be as good. It's as simple as that. And currently the realities are that we as females are not as represented. You all know that. In business, in entrepreneurship, etc. But I think the lowest data point I've ever seen as per females, and I obviously read lots of reports and seen lots of data and spoke with females from all over the world, The lowest data point I've seen is how much money we receive as entrepreneurs from venture capitalists, and it's 2% only. The rest, 98%, goes to male founders. So somehow, the biggest gap is really here in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and how we are funded as entrepreneurs. And it's not only in terms of venture funding, but if we look at traditional banks, again here that's US data, we only get about 5% of the loans related to business from banks. And if we talk about federal contract awards, again a US data point, it's again 5% only, right? So we are way behind, and it's really kind of not fair and not good enough looking from the impact side. Some other data on the corporate side, just to kind of complete the picture from that side as well. 4% of CEOs are held by women, and 17% of board seats at S&P 500 companies. If you look at Switzerland data, I didn't want to share Switzerland data. It's lower. So I stayed with some more, higher level, more positive data still here. So you may reason, why is this happening? Is it really only the bias? And let's really once again emphasize, the bias comes from both males and females. And very often, most often, if not pretty much all the time, it's unconscious bias. Nobody wants on purpose to kind of really discard us from the game. But it's this unconscious bias which is based on all those stereotypes, right? And if I go back for a second to the case study, we females have developed this defense mechanism to kind of downplay our achievements and talents and all that, so that we gain more likability. Because we now know likability and achievement is negatively correlated for us. If you have lots of achievements, you are less likable, right? So sometimes, with employers, with venture capitalists, with whoever, with other females, and I experienced that recently. I was speaking with someone, and at some point I realized this lady doesn't like me for some reason. I love them all. I was speaking with those three ladies, and I sense one of them is kind of, not really that positive. And I thought, well, you never know. Some unconscious mechanism is running back there. So, I did the same. I downplayed everything. I was just this cheerful woman, and nothing else. Forgot the professional side because it was creating friction. So we tend to do that. We tend to put ourselves down as a defense mechanism even before anyone else does it. We developed that as well. So it's a funny side of it. It's a sad side of it. And it's very, very prevalent side of it. Again, only some education, some kind of consciousness, acquiring consciousness about that can actually change this, in my view, and lots of scientists kind of back up the same approach, the same viewpoint. So you may also reason, okay, the bias is biased, but maybe there are simply not enough qualified females, not enough qualified and startup minds and founders on the female side. I hear you loudly thinking that. And basically, most of, the answers, most of, at conferences or many males will basically tell you the same thing. Even females, I had a conversation with an investment director, friend of mine, and she said, yeah, but, in my country, there are not that many female entrepreneurs. And data shows that females are graduating in pretty much every single area in higher numbers than men. So no matter if it's law or business schools or whatever, it's more, in totality, more females than males. So how come there is not enough talent, right? Is my statistical question. That's one data point. Then we see data, again, I'm skipping Switzerland because it's way lower, but if you look at US, it's about 13% of all founders that are women. By the way, they only get 6% of equity. They hold just 6% of equity. So again, a disproportion here. But 13%, and the rest is males. How come? What's wrong? And maybe many will conclude, yes, that's the reason. There are not enough female founders or not enough qualified female talent. No. And I've seen that on several occasions. And the most recent one that I want to share is from my Harvard reunion. One of the newest entities there at the Harvard Business School campus is the Harvard iLabs, which is kind of a couple of entities in one. They have a startup accelerator program. They have for alumni and for students. They have a life sciences lab. They have an innovation kind of more generic entity. So they really have achieved lots of traction both on the entrepreneurial side and the innovation side, or sometimes both, because very often those goes together really. And it's led by a lady, super smart, super educated, for sure aware of that bias and all these issues, because, you know, when I had a side chat with her, she big time confirmed, you know, all those concerns and said she's really trying to operate in such a way that she removes all the frictions from that process. Can you guess what's the male to female founders ratio there? And it's not really that they are targeting for that, but when they remove all the friction and bias in a very smart and conscious way, can you give me a percentage split? Like, what would you guess? 60-40, 30-70? Here we have 13, 1-3 females only in the real world. Like, what would you be your guess for the percentage split between males and females founders in the Harvard iLabs Startup Acceleration Program? Just give me a guess, whatever. 30-70? Yeah?
20%.
20? Anyone else?
If they do a good job, it's 50-50, right?
It is exactly 50-50. It's unbelievable, right? We don't even dare guessing it. It is exactly 50-50. Thank you. Thank you to all of you, you know, sharing and expressing how we feel about that. It's 50-50. When we give the opportunity, when we remove the bias and the friction and educate, we have the 50-50 split as Mother Nature meant it, and we are reaping all the benefits from that. We are reaping all those positive results and statistics with the 200s and the 50s and the 60s% into the data which goes above, right? So it's a great opportunity for males, for male business professionals, and for female business professionals, for everyone. Again, I'm not a feminist in the standard way, you know, but I truly, fully believe we have to come closer, we have to understand each other, we have to remove that friction and that misunderstandings and those biases along the way, so that we actually can get to somewhere better in terms of results, in terms of communication, in terms of everything, right? Okay, so 50-50 split. So now we have it. Now it's possible, suddenly, out of the blue, for once. And I'm sure that more and more entities actually will be getting there, because there is an effort in that respect, and that's another of the components that I wanted to touch upon. There are funds that are female-focused. There are already acceleration and incubation programs that are female-focused. I'll give you an example with one angel investor who really decided he's only investing in companies with female founders, male and female, or just female, but there must be a female founder, namely to arrive these, you know, synergies and additional opportunities. And he got reactions upon making these announcements, really with responses and reactions ranging from relief to gratefulness, and I'll quote him, to unbelievable outrage. Okay, so again, when we don't understand something, when we have a bias, when we are stereotypical, doesn't bring us anything good, right? I'll give you the name. I'll give you the name. Okay. And just one more thing, one more data point that, you know, focuses on the pure focused results for venture capital funds. If they actually added a more balanced female-male portfolio, they could be making, and, you know, the data point was over a 5 years period, 75 million in addition of gains. That's 17 million per year on average. You want to leave that money on the table? If I'm a venture capitalist, I don't want to leave this money on the table. So again, we all know that the venture and private equity community is very male and pale. So there are problems of both gender and race there. Yet here we are talking about the gender component, focusing on that. So, you know, there is a lot of opportunity, lots of opportunity. So the efforts are there. You know, I mentioned this angel investor. There are some funds here in Europe as well. There are some acceleration and incubation programs. There are a couple of great ones, and I'm already talking with actually one of them from the US. There is one in Australia. There are a couple in California. There are a couple of ones here in Europe, London, Germany, the usual suspect places for entrepreneurship. So what do they do? What do they do? They either focus on funding. There is one initiative that is kind of a traveling funding event for females. So they kind of cherry pick, like an acceleration or incubation program, the best startups, and they bring them together in Paris, and the theme is, for example, healthcare, or then they bring them in London and the theme is fintech, etc., etc. And they, of course, have the connections, have developed connections with local investors. So, you know, the idea is to fund female businesses. So the focus is really on funding. They've got some success. I think they're operational now for about 5 years. They managed to raise about 53 million. It's okay, but again, it's probably not going far beyond these 2%. It's just concentrating, you know, part of these 2% into a specific initiative. There is another approach. There is, and I believe that's where really the value could be as a starting point. It's creating a curriculum, a program, materials to actually enlighten us, if I may use this slightly provocative term, to enlighten us about the issue and kind of find solutions. So teach both females how to overcome this unconscious bias on all the fronts, from females, from males, from investors, in corporate, etc., etc. All right? And then also teach and provide this training and curriculum to those other parties, to the investors within corporates, maybe within universities, within schools. There is some already demand on that side as well already, right? So this is the approach, like in a biblical way, teach them how to fish and, you know, they'll be done for life, covered for life. So in a way, this is it. I really truly believe that this is the main avenue to achieve success in this domain. Spreading such knowledge and such ways, practical, from theoretical to practical ways to actually overcome that. And then, of course, a third component here is to focus on the network and support part. So that's, of course, very important. For example, one such accelerator, female-focused accelerator in the Silicon Valley is backed up by Sheryl Sandberg, by many other icons from the entrepreneurial world in the Silicon Valley. And of course, there's, you know, the value of the network there is very important. So it really brings, by definition, you know, removal of many of these problems that we are talking about. So what are the potential routes? One idea would be to get a curriculum like that and actually spread it in a bigger way. So build really this global female acceleration knowledge, and yes, build specific accelerators where it makes sense, but really the more important idea is to spread this knowledge and this training. A second idea would be like those accelerators that are existing now, currently the female-focused accelerators and incubators. Start, you know, from scratch and kind of build some here and there. And that's already happening, right? Just some isolated efforts here and there. Not enough. Statistics proves it, right? Not enough as of yet. And then a third idea, third potential avenue would be, and here I'm actually asking for your kind of votes. I'm really interested to hear what you think, which is the best avenue. The third potential route that I thought of is really trying to assemble in an association-like manner, to kind of put together in a club, in an association style, everybody who has done some effort in that field, so that it's like a one-stop shop for that. Yet another opportunity, right? A third option here. So starting from scratch and just building more and more accelerators, or spreading globally already existing top-notch curriculum and, you know, attaching programs and spreading this within the entrepreneurial ecosystem with launching accelerators, also within corporate, within universities, within schools. And then the third option is, yes, gaining more traction by combining the efforts and having a one-stop shop in an association-like manner. So this is kind of how I see it. And again, in order to get started, I've already initiated some effort into at least one of these directions, which I believe is the best. And then who can benefit? As already kind of we touched upon that, who can benefit from that? First and foremost, males, businesses, right? And startups where they get these synergies and this bigger impact. Of course, at the same level, I'm putting females because we are benefiting again in multiple ways, not only by the results of the business, but by our own professional results, right? Corporates, again, same data, same achievements apply, and same higher performance applies within the corporate environment if we manage to boost levels of, female inclusion and kind of female seniority as well. And then we also mentioned schools, universities, many other establishments. Maybe you have more idea, please share. And of course, I guess for sure I might be missing something here. That's why I really wanted to come and speak with other females, to get more ideas, more input, and see how you also see that. So these are my thoughts. Again, I'm in the beginning of this journey, in this project, so to call it. And while there is some traction, there is still lots of open space and lots of kind of uncharted territory there as per how to go forward. There is the need, there is a big pain, and there is a big opportunity. So how to address that and what are the specific next steps, what makes sense for you, for example, from those 3 approaches that I mentioned. I'm really interested and curious to hear. And of course, I guess at that point, I'll open for your input and your questions. So off to you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Dessy. That was very insightful.
Thank you. Yes.
To your potential solutions, I don't have a specific opinion on one. I think all of them should be done. I think everything could be done under an umbrella of an association. In that respect, I think we should go, or you should go all of the 3 routes, basically. Maybe starting with one.
Why not?
I think it should be holistic. Mm-hmm. But I'm a bit more interested into hearing, because you've read a lot of research about that topic. What are the kind of and I studied psychology, so of course I see stuff through a psychological lens at the first place. What are the kind of behavioral patterns of a successful female entrepreneur? So is it persistence that they have, or any other behavioral patterns? Because that's something then one could focus, could communicate and train people, because maybe women give up more easily. Or are not focused enough. They have like 3 different options, and then they lose focus or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do you have some insight in that?
Yeah,
also from your personal experience.
Yeah. So there is one very important thing which investors look at when assessing males and females. So while for men, when a project is presented, they are looking in terms of potential. They're really looking at the potential of this project. For females, the judgment parameter is different. It's performance. So if you can focus and kind of really highlight, although again we know that now it's correlated negatively with likability, but you have to really, as a female entrepreneur, try to hit the right balance between emphasizing the performance that you achieved so far, because this is the proof point for investors. So focusing on the achievements, on the performance thus far, with the risk of being disliked to a certain extent, but again, try not to be disliked too much. So it's very hard at the same time handling the stereotypical bias and proving your performance, but that's it. We are very often, unfortunately, not judged on the potential of our ideas and our business. It's very sad. And even further, in one research, one author says that, especially if it comes to females and female-related business, like, I don't know, kids stuff, they'll just ask, investors will ask their girlfriends, their wives, if they say, oh, that's a cool idea, they'll invest. You see what I mean? So, if the business is in such an area, more female-related area, it's one thing. But then if it's a tech area, I think female tech entrepreneurs are really suffering, namely because of that. We have to prove ourselves twice. We have to prove our performance and the ability of achievement, and we have to prove the potential, which comes very distant second, potentially, right, as a consideration there. So So this is kind of the starting point, and then again you can obviously work on different behaviors, on showing and kind of testing which works further on. Yeah.
Do you know in which region of the world area, I don't know, women are the most successful? Somehow I feel that Asia is not bad in this regard. That there are a lot of women leaders in good positions, in key positions, even in government ministries related positions.
Yeah.
Are the Asian women already a bit stronger? Can we learn from them, or how do you think that?
I don't have the definite answer on that. I also have seen statistics such as out of the 20 billionaires, for example, in China, the top 20 billionaires, more than half are females or something. Don't quote me on that, but I think you have a point here. And to me, again, that's my logic and reasoning. If you think of a sociologist, which is really important as per his knowledge, namely addresses this in an interesting way. Hofstede, a Dutch sociologist who actually developed 5 dimensions to assess each and every nation kind of mentality, or even business mentality. Very, very often it's used and it's taught in business schools as model. So one of those dimensions, it's called the 5 cultural dimensions by Hofstede. So I think one very relevant dimension is the dimension which namely compares femininity, masculinity, or pushy, aggressive versus more passive, more yin-yang kind of thing. You see what I mean? So immediately you plot, each and every country. You go to Hofstede's website and you can plot each and every country and you'll get the answer. Because you see where countries which have very high score on the femininity or on the more kind of, not passive, but like, I would say, yes, soft approach to things. It's cultural, really. And yes, China scores high, for example. So maybe a couple of other Asian countries are scoring higher on that. And therefore, females intrinsically have more have more stuff that's appreciated, more behaviors, more achievements, etc. So, yeah.
I would be curious to kind of open the discussion a little bit, and within the context of what Dessy said, and within the context of your question, what are the situations and behaviors in your own life that you felt you have been kind of left behind because you're a woman? Because if we kind of try to pinpoint those, maybe we can see what is that brings us together.
I think we'll need a month as a minimum to cover that.
But if we kind of just keep to a couple of sentences the answer, maybe we can get a little bit of interesting discussion going on.
I mean, I have the easy stereotypical one. My first job out of uni, I earned 10% less than my male colleague, who was also straight out of uni with the same degree.
Okay.
And upon finding it out, it was like, oh, well, we can't change it now.
Okay.
So I think that's stereotypical.
You were lucky. I had exactly the same situation for a role that they offered me, as a promotion. It was a good level director. It was in another country. So my colleagues, the male colleagues that got similar level, and again, same educational background, same kind of Ivy League, schooling.
Whatever.
Yeah, same everything. And they got a fat expat package. I was offered a local, and that was not a rich country. A local package, and they really insisted, I don't want to use the word forced, but they really insisted that I go, versus for the male colleagues, there was the option, you say yes or you say no. There was actually an option. For me, there was not an option. So, you were lucky.
I'd like to address the 3 options that you put out.
Yes, please.
I've been working on professional women and trying to highlight things for a very, very long time. Set up organizations throughout Europe, etc. And at the beginning, and as a leader in big companies, I really have the Nike just do it approach. I took over a team, I saw that there were differences in salaries. When it came up to salary time, I was quite shocked about the differences. For some weird reason, I had a very, very diverse team, which isn't obvious, so I was very grateful for that, for the differences were there. And I actually went to see all the guys in my team, and I said, I'm really sorry, this year you're not getting anything, because this is all I found, and teams that I manage, this doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't even have the budget to fix it all in 1 year, but, you know, we
Over
agreed on a
time.
plan, and I just did it. You know, I didn't ask permission, I didn't
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to do
great,
anything.
fantastic. We need
And then,
more of
you
you.
know, I had a very supportive boss, but you know, I didn't know how he would react on this. And afterwards, once I did it, then I went to him and I said, well, by the way, if I found this in my team, I'm pretty sure that all my colleagues are having the same issue.
Yep.
And if I were you, just to avoid legal risks going forward, I would tell them to fix it. I don't do it. But it's a very different approach, and I think when we do have leadership positions, that's what we have to
Yeah.
do. It's not about teaching, it's about doing, because that makes all the difference. And so when I look at what you're talking about, which is actually there is an opportunity in the market of using classic ways of funding that for some weird reason aren't applied to women, but let's use those classic ways of funding applied to women, not asking women to change, asking people to understand different behaviors, just working on that is a great business proposition because of all the statistics.
Yeah,
you said.
yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that is a really worthwhile initiative.
True.
Because you know, you're not talking about behaviors or cultural issues, you're talking about money, good investments, and calling out when you see differences.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's something that I think we can do, is just shift the balance, use systems that have performed well, and just apply them to this segment of the population that has been overlooked and underserved.
Yeah.
And for me, that's worth all the energy. and
Exactly. No, I
and
fully
the results will speak for themselves.
I fully agree with you. I just think we need a way more of people like you and of, you know, behavior like yours compared to what we currently find out there. So precedents like that, or like, you know, the guy from sales.
Talk about moral courage a little bit, but actually there's something even more. I think we've fallen into women are like this, men are like that. Actually, when you look at it from a scientific point of view, and there was a wonderful Scientific American about a year or so ago, where they put together all these studies about brains and behaviors and all of that. And they showed statistically that there is much more difference within a gender population
Okay.
than between the two genders.
The two genders.
So the whole point of not being biased in any way is actually going to the individual. You know, you're investing in an individual.
In an
You're
individual.
not
That's the best.
investing in
That's the best by far.
a woman that then has to work in women-type things in a women-type way. I mean, I happen to be a STEM major. I haven't done any of that. My last job was in a cement company. You know, if you take that out of the equation and you're able to judge people for who they are, then all of a sudden the whole discussion goes away and you start looking at
The problem is we don't do that.
This is what I want to
to boost
help
forward.
accelerate. That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that change.
So how do you see that? How do you see that happening? Because, you know, you are a precious example, which, you know, we have to multiply. How do we do that?
But I think what you were talking about in terms of funding, I think that is where things speak. And I would love to be able to kind of do something
Yeah.
in that sense.
So you're saying, you know, let's have more really open-minded investors. Right now, I think the data point is 8% of female venture capitalists are females. At least 8% of venture capitalists, and that's US data point again, are females. 8 out of the 100. So your point is, let's try to push that bigger and fund more females in a.
Right, so funding females because it's an underserved and market with a lot of potential. But the funders don't have to be female. Money is money.
No. But again, when it's males,
So
I
think
wish.
it's a question of identifying the market segment, which you've done so well, and then saying, how can we find that system that will say, yes, I'm going to focus. You know, like you say, I would focus on fintech, or I would focus on life science.
Exactly.
You say, well, you know, for all of these reasons, this is a high potential, underserved segment.
Exactly.
Why do
we should invest into it? Exactly. That's actually part. That's part of what some of those US programs are doing. They work with investors and try to remove that bias. Again, no matter if male, female investors. And again, you're saying maybe just teaching and all that it's more than that. Maybe, I guess, the linguistics is preventing from expressing it right. But, you know, when they actually see also the statistics and the benefits, etc., they launch themselves more into that direction. So they become more like you and less like, you know, those data points which are not so great. So I guess, yes, your approach is the ultimate best way to do that more. To me, the question is how we get there. How we get there. How do we get more of you? How do we get more people like you, more investors like you? And here's really the challenge. You know, I guess it's great that people like you went out there and spoke to the entire organization, or asked the boss to really address that in the entire organization. This is really, yeah, the just do it approach. I think this is what everybody should be doing whenever we spot something like that. You're absolutely right.
On that, love what you said, and it really resonated. So I mentioned earlier, I came from the corporate world as a senior executive. So, you know, I ran the business, I had the P&L. I can just do it, you know, not ask for permission.
Yeah.
And I think actually one way to, we just need the critical mass, right?
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
to show people when a woman is in a team, in a meeting, it changes the dynamic. So in this case, having more women entrepreneurs, being highly visible in the PR and, you know, and whatnot. But I think to get there might be a way to connect from the corporate world, women. So like for myself, when I left the corporate world and wanted to get more involved with startups, with angel investing, there's no clear path. You know, my other senior corporate women mentors who also retired, they're, you know, kind of doing things on their own. Mm-hmm. But I think there's power because now there are more senior women in the corporate world. How do you tap them and offer them a path to mentoring as well as financing some of these incredible startup ideas on this side? It's also two different worlds right now.
Exactly.
You know, so I think thinking of a bridge where you can leverage potentially more women executives who have operating experience, but you know, as I found out, it's very different in the startup world than in the corporate world in terms of the, you know, the day-to-day or the whatnot. But in the end, understanding how to manage people, teams, you know, running a business, I think there's a lot more we could probably do to try to bridge those two worlds.
So I guess, yes, adding this as another core approach or maybe main approach to actually spot people and reinforce the cumulative effect of people like you who are really spotting the challenge and giving opportunity. And then, of course, on the funding side as well, that's yet another approach how, you know, we can build some more critical mass of that and just doing it and expanding it.
One potential idea would be to, you know, listen to startup pitches and then make a short list and, you know, be great communicators and linking that to funders. I think that's a potential way of going there. I think that's quite an open field. If you were in another area, no, there's lots of people doing that, but I think in this field, potentially, you know, if there's an interest of, you know, a few of us to get together, that could be a good path.
Okay, we are starting a fund now. No, but that's great. Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been in the startup world before, and then what I saw, we organized a lot of those pitching events, and it was always 50-plus-year-old males judging for grants, for prizes and everything. And I think it's not just the money; it's also the awards of like we're the top 10 startups or whatever. I think there people would need to be volunteering for jury duty, which is usually hard to get people into. And if we had at least 1 or 2 women on the jury boards, that would help. Because you never even get to the funding stage. You stop before.
There's so few women that are participating in those competitions from the beginning, so it's really getting them early and nurturing their own business idea. I think, I mean, I'm in the same situation. You want to do this thing, but maybe you don't know how to get there. Even if you've done your MBA, you're intimidated because it's all guys. They have a network from where they went to school. They all studied together. It's very difficult, but it's not impossible. You just have to be very gritty. Let's say.
By the way, you know, when you're saying that and mentioning the MBA part, or you know, it can be any other education really, but you know that kind of resonates with me because there is this whole program that they launched, revamping the Harvard Business School environment, because it was also very male dominated, and there is a whole case study, I can share the link, how they actually moved it more towards equality rather than those dominating male students, or even if you look at the professorship side, female professors were always ranked lower and kind of scoring. And I had fantastic, one of my best prof was a female back at Harvard, of course with many other phenomenal ones, but so they really made a whole big program and they managed to get in 1 year. Everybody, even the dean was saying, it's not possible in 1 year, but it was, this whole initiative was led by, bless you, an operations prof, female herself, who said, we are changing it now. We are not planning this for 2 years or 3 years from now. We are changing that now, when the issues of that kind went to some critical mass. And her initiative, and of course she was the mastermind behind, but they really, everybody got involved, and the dean was very supportive, etc. So they managed in about a year to completely redefine the scope and get way more equal grading, because even for grades, females would get lower grades at Harvard Business School. Am I worse than my counterparts? I'm not, but there is again part of this bias playing a role. So anyway, that's just a bracket to illustrate with one more example, because yes, even in these environments, it's not really completely flat and even and equivalent. It's really different. So you're right.
But people can join, and some people have senior roles.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe we should simply expand, one of the ideas, and again, it's like how you structure it is a really whole different question, but conceptually, what you're saying is, yes, this ecosystem or association or kind of common initiative in that direction. And then what you're saying is, let's involve everyone from every field, corporate or the funding side, and let's just boost that up and just do it, right? That's yet another kind of point here. So absolutely, I think all those are great ideas that I guess at least I'll roll up my sleeves and work on. If anyone is interested, would be great.
Say there are 5 or 6 or 7 associations that have started.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot going on, and
yes,
it does seem like there are a lot of great kickoff meetings, and then you don't actually see the results at the end of the day. So I think it's important to think about how to really work with what's already out there, because it's getting very fragmented, potentially. Yeah.
Which ones are out there that you feel like that have some traction?
Well, I think there's GVest, there's Women in Tech, there have been 1 or 2 others that have started.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on. It's actually really impressive, but I think it's getting a little bit fragmented.
I think what's my observation on that? I've noticed the same pattern, that there is a lot happening, the topic is hot, yet, some are based mostly on networking. Let's just focus and try to do something in that field, like tech field, or just supporting females, or kind of, be the better ourselves. For example, there is again, as per Sheryl Sandberg book, Lean In, which is really focusing on females and how we lead and, develop our careers. There is the whole Lean In network, but guess what? The last event in Geneva, although probably a great event, I think it was associated with some watchmaking stuff.
So they do it here. They do have small mentor groups, and then people attend the global conference, I think. And that is actually valuable because it's free and you have a mentor, but it's in a group of say 8 people. Mm-hmm. But it is a question of really not being maybe structured enough and concrete as to what the outcome. There's the Lean In network.
Lean In circles, yes.
To look at, I guess, do a benchmark of what's out there and how to.
And then there is the WIN conference, Women in Networking conference, which started, in my view, in a great way. Again, I don't want to sound like the naysayer, but I looked at the pricing, and a friend of mine, who was considering actually going, she said, that's crazy. It's prohibitive. And actually, the conference pricing, if you compare to other conferences, it's way cheaper. So I guess for an underserved community, you have to make it even easier, to enter and to be there. And another, actually, a colleague who wanted to speak, she was really interested to share some ideas there, and she wanted to speak potentially at this conference. And she after checking everything, she called back and she said, you know, actually I have to pay in order to speak. And it was not really a negligible amount. It was like 900 euro or something. So I'm full of admiration for this event and for this whole structure, but I think the pricing is just prohibitive, again, for an underserved, you know, in a way, community. On the contrary, you should be finding ways to include as many and not really put, you know, such a door stopping them from entering. So yes, there is a lot. Some are focused on, you know, one side, some are focused on another side, and you are right, maybe we have to kind of really try to assemble everyone and have some really strong central agenda and actually achieve things, have the milestones and really move forward. And, you know, one aspect can be, you know, just doing it. Another aspect can be maybe combining efforts and synergies and kind of best practices across organizations. It's all there. But I also think there is a lot that hasn't yet brought us where we need to be. And that's the concerning part, which we have to fix.
Can I?
Yeah.
I just want to say that what I'm hearing is that on one hand there's a suggestion to add mentors and to also choose more women's startups to be funded. And this brings me to the thought that it's again like me, choose me, kind of being chosen on behalf of somebody else who has more authority. And what I heard you saying was that you dared to do something without asking for permission.
Yep.
So it comes to your point about behavior. So you dared to exhibit a behavior which is not in the kind of in the
mainstream.
In the mainstream of proper behavior, because you thought that's wrong. So in this sense, if we follow the mentality of let's go and choose more women, we're disempowering them. In the sense of I don't know how to express it better. In the sense of when people wait to be chosen, it's a waiting game. But when you decide to act upon what's wrong and right, you take the initiative. So for me the question is, how do we balance taking the initiative and stepping out of the comfort zone saying, I'm just going to do that, as opposed to just waiting to be...
The best way I heard is to express it is, you know, life is not a Disney movie. Nobody's going to come and save you. So saving yourself and, you know, is really the best approach.
It reminds me of the classical debate about whether, be it university or boards for stock-listed companies, should have a quota on female senior executives. Yes or no. There was a long debate also in Switzerland. No, quota is bad because we want to have the right people, not just a quota of women. And it was also at the University of Zurich, like 20 years ago, when they actually introduced some sort of a soft quota, and they on purpose gave a job to certain female professors, and it was exactly this female professor whom I then, after graduating, I started to work for. I just want to say it's in between. We have to push the female a little bit further up to be present, because those will be then the decision takers for taking the decisions that the next cohort, the next generation can exhibit behaviors. I think there should be some sort of a push, but I know it's highly debated. I know there are a lot of news articles about whether women should be put in a position.
But
passive in that respect.
Yeah, I think I agree. You know, there should be also, you know, a bit of the two sides, because another data point, when you look at two CVs, like the Heidi and the Howard example, it's exactly the same. If you put everything the same on those CVs, except for the name, one is a male, another is a female name, guess which CV gets more appreciated? Even by female recruiters. So the bias, the unconscious bias, is so strong at all levels in the system that, you know, I guess we have to really look at best practices and combine approaches in order to move forward. We obviously have some proven ways and some great ways that are obvious and that are working, but, you know, there are some more hidden and nuanced issues and challenges which we have to also address in a more nuanced way, I'd say. So yes, I agree to your point. It has to be a blend of various approaches. It's not really one solution fits it all and everything and across the system and the structure. Yeah.
This classical glass ceiling effect that has been studied.
Yeah.
I think there's different interventions depending on the focus, right? So if you're talking about recruitment, that's one thing. If you're talking about organizations in large companies, that's another.
Yeah, true.
So, the selection mode really only works in the VC world because that's how it works. And you really have to look through, hundreds of ideas to find the gems.
Yep.
So you can't do anything else but, do that selection.
True.
On the other hand, we could have a role in terms of communication and PR that will help that system, and then matching. So, but that's very specific to that.
Yep,
I think
yep.
interventions in other areas have to be done.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, you talk about acceleration, which is, if you look at the flow of, how one decides to become an entrepreneur and then follows through, right? So, do we actually lose more women at that later stage of basically being picked for investment or stuff like that, or do we lose more women on basically actually deciding to try and ideate and go for this path? And I speak from I don't have entrepreneurial experience, right? I'm lucky. I've never felt being being missed out on opportunities in my professional life. But for example, I was never also, I never really considered to become an entrepreneur, and I think that's, and basically I was dropped out of that funnel, well, maybe I would have been good at it, so because I never had role models that it would inspire me to just imagine myself in that role, right, when growing up. And then basically there was no, institutional push, or maybe some peers were saying this is a viable option, you just had a professional corporate career option, right? So, and I don't know, my hypothesis, we actually lose more in that funnel on that initial stage than from that select group of people who actually, women who decide to be entrepreneurs, and then of course they also have more problems down the line of getting picked and getting scaling the companies. But I have the feeling that actually that pool presents even bigger opportunity to address, which just goes back to the education and role modeling, and basically just their opening that, making that possibility realistic for.
I don't know. I don't have a data point on that. I know there are organizations that address that in some way. For example, one organization, I think, I'm not sure if it's international or US focused, or it was actually in Asia, I have to verify that, who has this program for namely young girls, pairing them with mentors, and not just with, okay, you've got one mentor and then this person follows through with you. No, they, each mentor, there is a pool of mentors, so each mentor has to introduce you to 3 more contacts / mentors, and then, in a very short period of time, you end up with a network of 16 people, and you are still either in high school or some early enough years, and then you've got those role models, supportive network, and then of course potential intros for an internship for whatever. So it's kind of a variety of options introduced to you and some support to explore. So it's one organization, and I think it's in one country actually only. But yes, I fully hear you. I agree with you that it's probably at the various stages of the funnel of our evolution, of our development, career-wise, that we are kind of falling off. I know that for corporate, there is a very sharp decline for female participation in general and in senior roles. So that decline starts at about an age of it was late 30s or something. So I guess it may coincide with, when you are more dedicated to your children or something. I'm not sure, but it's really like a very sharp falling off from the workforce of capable female talent. So standard corporate, workforce. And then again, for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I don't know at which point of the journey, there are some that don't even consider it. There are some of us which consider it, but maybe drop off the process, etc., etc. Yeah, that's another. Someone has to do a research on that, I guess.
I mean, so my background is in strategy consulting, and strategy consulting is another area where women are very underrepresented, and basically, not that the firms got perfect at it, but at least like their efforts. And so they started with saying, okay, so when someone joins an associate, and then like you have the new consultant and project leader and stuff. So basically. The reasons why they lose women, right, changes also depending on this transition, right? So also the age and stuff, but also the demands of the role, or maybe the criteria that are being used for promotion, right? Yes. And so basically, you need to really understand the root cause for each sort of what's the biggest lever that you do, So is it flex time? Is it like supported childcare arrangements? So this kind of stuff. Then you say, okay, these are tricks that we can do that will affect that specific situation that is like addresses 50% of cases of dropouts at this stage. And I guess like if you look in the entrepreneurship as a workflow, as a path, right, that you can also look at the specific, what you call the frictions, right? But basically, what are the root causes for diminishing, like for leading it to that number of 8% or whatever, this like percent that is too small.
Yeah, exactly. So then you have a clearer idea of each and every reason at what stage, and again, the problem. That's 50% of the solution. That's an area to be, I guess, researched. Or I personally haven't seen data on this as of yet. Yeah.
One small idea I had as well. When I've been observing on social media, there are some small but quite successful initiatives, like startup shows. That is like a friend of mine posting quite successful in Israel and Switzerland interviews with startups, video interviews on a regular basis, and they're hardly ever female entrepreneurs. So under what umbrella ever, if you start the association or whatever, I think the social media could be used as well to create this sogenannte Sog effect in German. I can't translate that, the pull effect. If you see more female entrepreneurs who have been successful or studying it, seeing how Elizabeth Holmes is the best example, right, from Theranos. She was so kind of inspired about her business idea, and I think if young entrepreneurs female entrepreneurs see more senior inspired entrepreneurs, this creates this pull effect as well. Why social media is and I think one really great role model. You don't want to end up in jail. She was able to raise. Yes, it's a long chapter.
It's her own and her family network than anything else. And, ethics is pretty key. So there's better models out there.
Yeah, I guess you're referring to the fact that she really made it up until a point, but at the cost of compromising, other things. So again, we that's you're right. The power of social and of any other communication and sort of kind of coordinating and putting efforts together is really important here. Yeah.
I think I just tap on, just to follow up on that idea. Yeah. It goes back to the idea earlier too. It's just amplifying the voices of who's gotten there, right? So these are entrepreneurs. They're so few and far in between. How can we, going back to your support network, also have the support network of great digital media women who can help promote and get the voices of the stories of these women out there in a much broader way? Because it's all about just getting that mind share, if you will, to let other women know these are role models, but also just as important to let the men also know that this is a potential, this is a successful enterprise startup led by a woman. This is what the woman founder CEO looks like, sounds like. A lot of times it's just being more in contact with those who are not the same as you to dispel some of those stereotypes.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Because also to add on that, I think maybe they do it much better. So they push themselves each other from university. I mean, I'm a bit earlier in my career compared to some people here, but from university they really push to build the society, the entrepreneurship society. They put themselves at the board, then they go out to speak. So I think back to the educational push a little bit to explore this world a little bit earlier, I would say, because there is also huge cultural differences depending where you're coming from. Because I'm from Italy, studied in London. It was a cultural clash when I started studying with the Nordics countries, because they're way more open, entrepreneur. I don't know, but in Italy there is a bit the stereotype, okay, you can study, but then at the end of the day you need to take care of the kid. But then you learn that there is a bit more out of that you can aim and achieve, and they help you in probably managing both, and of course you need to support a partner in this path, but I think there's a lot to, I don't know, push and boost a bit the culture effect that, because if I think about my friends also back in Italy, none of them would ever dare thinking about starting a startup, and I'm from a small city, so I'm not from Milan, but it would be good, I think, to start a little bit earlier as well, to create more women like her, that then, in a way, they have the balls to go to the boss and say, I'm going to change that, because it's a culture where sometimes you don't dare doing that.
Exactly. And that's, again, back to the stereotypes. So maybe in your culture there is a stronger even, and again, also Hofstede claims that each and every culture has their own preferences and kind of areas of focus. So maybe for your culture, the stereotype for females is even further into the direction of, okay, carer, you know, more communal, etc., rather than, you know, with initiative and bold and achiever, etc., which is kind of man attributes. So absolutely, and as per your point as well, how early in your evolution as a future professional it starts. I also didn't have role models of entrepreneurs early in my life. And I guess that's why I also didn't start when I was 22, which is kind of the male, you know, lower age for starting up a business. But I started, you know, at the late edge of the female one. So you're absolutely right. So I think that's a big, actually, a very important way as well, because you are right, you know, just do it. But how do we get there to just do it? Like your friends back home, they won't even consider just doing it, as you know, if I can put the two things in parallel, right? So how do we get there?
I think it's really critical to not neglect public policy. I mean, I lived in Norway, Scandinavia, it's all public policy. The government drove it, from the quotas to making it easier to be an entrepreneur to making it easier to be a mother. So there are major public policy issues that need to be addressed here, which is probably beyond the scope of this group, but it's something that needs to be addressed. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I feel like that's something everyone is talking about. If you don't address the structural issues,
yeah, true as well.
It's a huge barrier.
So one more component added.